for Armor Animal Health webinar sponsored by SCCL Colostrum. We are going to be talking about all things colostrum, how to differentiate between different colostrum replacers. And we're doing that with Julianna Langemeier from SCCL Colostrum. Just one note, or a couple notes actually, we will be recording this webinar. And also, if you have questions during the presentation, feel free to put them in the chat and we will address them at some point. So thank you very much, and I'll turn it over to you, Julianna.
Thanks, Colleen, and thanks everyone for taking a little bit of time out of your day to learn about something that we are pretty passionate about over here at SCCL, and that is colostrum. So like Colleen said, my name is Julianna Langemeier. I serve as the U.S. Brand and Communications Manager for our little company called SCCL, and that stands for Saskatoon Colostrum Company Limited. The title of this presentation, I always try to be a little bit strategic with that, is We Are Colostrum. So if there's one thing that I hope you take away today, it's that within all of our products and every solution that we have, it's colostrum. So we don't take a fractionated approach to providing the best start for newborn calves. We truly rely on colostrum. I have joining me Mr. Brad Mobby. He's new to the SCCL team. At the end, I'll share a contact roster with all of our team members. But for anyone in the dealer channel or that works with another layer of customers, he's a great resource for you as well. So I just wanted to give a shout out to Brad, who's also on this call joining me. I will open it up for questions after each section. I have 3 sections that I'll kind of go through today, just to break it up so that it's not just totally mundane slide after slide. But the 3 things that I'm going to cover today, and I apologize for anyone on the dealer team at Armor, this might be a refresher course. But today we're going to go through just first off establishing who needs colostrum, which calves are most susceptible to needing a colostrum supplement or a colostrum replacer, because the maternal colostrum maybe isn't enough for those calves to get a great start. Then we're going to go through, after we establish that need, we'll go through what are the different solutions on the market and how do we navigate between those. And then at the end, I'll explain the SCCL solution. So I'll go through our product lineup and what makes that so special. So again, if anyone has any questions today, feel free to, like Colleen said, she'll be managing the chat. Interrupt, you can totally interrupt me, ask a question if it's just on the top of your mind and you've got to get it off your tongue. Or after each section, I'll open it up for questions too. I have a few videos that I'll share during the presentation too. At SCCL, we have really technical, research-driven information. And so we try to provide that in different ways so that it's not so heavy and hard to digest. So we have these new animation videos and we're actually about to launch them on headstartdairy.com. So feel free to check that out if you want to learn more. But I'm going to start with just a brief video that just explains what is colostrum. So kind of a cheesy little video, I will admit, and pretty elementary for most of us, but I think it's a good refresher just to remind ourselves that colostrum is different than milk, right? It's different than anything else that calves get in their lifetime. It's this awesome combination of immune factors, growth factors and hormones, perfect levels of vitamins and minerals, it's energy for calves, and we'll go through that a little bit more. But what is so important to remember is that when a calf is born, it's not born with functioning antibodies to protect it against different pathogens that could then cause disease. And so those calves have to rely on the antibodies that they get only through colostrum to protect them against these challenges. So when they're born, they have no passive immunity, and they really just get that through colostrum. So when we talk about colostrum, we usually talk in terms of IgG. Ig is the abbreviation for immunoglobulins, which is a long word that's basically antibodies. We're all familiar with antibodies. We talk about it a lot. During COVID, I feel like we're all becoming immunologists in a way. But these immunoglobulins that these calves absorb only through the first couple hours of life, then are absorbed into the blood system and then bind to different pathogens or bacteria that can cause some of these illnesses. So without those antibodies, the calf is really susceptible to getting sick with digestive issues, sick with scours, respiratory challenges, and whatnot. And so we have to rely on colostrum in the first day to provide this immune system until their own immune system can kick in after after a few weeks of life. So when we talk about colostrum, I think it's important to note that it's beyond just IgG. Like I said earlier, we have the immune factors, which some will argue is the most beneficial part of colostrum, and I would agree with you. Immune factors are totally essential for these newborn calves, but we have to note that a newborn calf also has a small intestine that is the last organ that's actually being developed after that calf is born. It's not completely developed. That's how we can have that passive transfer of immunity and that absorption through what we call the open gut. And so we rely not just on these immune factors within colostrum, but also on some growth factors and hormones that help establish a healthy physical layer within the small intestine. So those small microvilli that actually live in the gut that provide surface area for absorption and feed efficiency throughout that calf's lifetime, we're actually stimulating that growth with colostrum. Another thing to note is that colostrum is super potent with colostral fat. And so in that maternal colostrum that the calf gets, it's getting a huge energy boost along with vitamins, minerals, and really this perfect profile that calves need when they're born. I personally like to say that colostrum in its whole state is kind of perfectly created by God. It has the total combination that's specifically designed for a newborn calf, and we really can't recreate it. Although we try with different products on the market, we really can't recreate it effectively by alternative sources. So the best thing for newborn calves truly is whole bovine colostrum. When I talked earlier about, or I mentioned earlier that the gut is open, right? So absorption of antibodies happens within the first 24 hours. Well, I would like to remind everybody that 24 hours, although that's when gut closure happens, the most, or I guess the highest percentage, the highest percentage of absorption that happens within the gut is within the first 1 to 2 hours. And so if you can see on the screen here on the left side, that is the apparent efficacy of the absorption that those calves have. Truly, when a calf is born, it can't absorb 100% of what we're feeding it. It's actually already under 50%. And that's just because that's the biological ability of that calf, right? It can't absorb more than that. So what we have to do then is make sure that we're feeding colostrum quickly within the first couple of hours so that that calf can absorb the highest levels that it's physically able to. If we wait a few hours, you can see that ability to absorb colostrum declines kind of rapidly. And there's a quick decline right between 5 and 7 hours. After that, if we have to give an additional feeding, we still can. There's still some absorption happening, but we want to make sure that we're impacting those calves early on. So the sooner we can feed them, the more efficiently they'll be able to absorb what we're giving them. So I said I would establish the need, right? Which calves need colostrum? So I won't open it up for discussion, but I want you guys to think about Within the beef industry, so across beef calves across the US, 1 in how many calves have failure passive transfer? And I'll define failure passive transfer. Failure passive transfer is when a calf does not absorb enough antibodies within the first couple hours to have a high enough level in their immune system or within their blood serum to really have an established immune system, right? And so there's a level in the blood of 10 grams per liter of IGs that we can actually track to see if those calves got enough colostrum. So 1 in how many beef calves would you guess across the US don't get passive transfer of immunity? So we're not managing those calves appropriately or effectively. It's 1 in every 3 calves. And so I grew up on a cow-calf ranch here in eastern South Dakota, and we always took the mindset or the approach that when that calf is born, the cow takes care of it. And obviously, if it's a twin or an orphaned calf, or if it's a cold stress or something like that, we knew that we needed to intervene. But for the most part, we assumed that that calf was getting up and the dam was taking care of it. Well, we now know, based on statistics, that 1 in every 3 calves, beef calves, that actually doesn't happen right. So we probably should be intervening a little bit more than when we think. And so I'm going to go through some of those scenarios when we probably should be focused on specific vulnerable calves when we're calving out beef cows. So one of the first calves to think about is the calves that are born to first calf heifers. So when that heifer is getting close to calving, she concentrates the antibodies that she has built up throughout her short lifespan. And although that quality or the amount of antibodies that she can concentrate is pretty potent, because of her size and her maturity, she's not able to provide the same volume that more of a mature cow could provide. And so for first calf heifers, we actually should watch those calves and think maybe we should supplement to make sure that that calf gets the volume that they need. A newborn calf needs about 10% of its body weight in volume. So an 80-pound calf, if you were to convert that to kilograms, it's approximately a 40-ish kilogram calf. So that 40-kilogram calf should be getting 4 liters or 4 quarts of colostrum. So that's just kind of a benchmark to keep in mind, that calves need about 10% of their body weight. And for a calf born to a first calf heifer, we can't tell whether or not that calf really nursed the amount that it needed to. We can just assume that oftentimes first calf heifers don't provide the level of volume that their calves need. The next most vulnerable calf is one born in a cold, wet storm. I'm from South Dakota, where it can be nasty during calving season. And so calves born when it's cold, when it's wet, when it's snowy, when it's miserable, those calves actually have a pretty stressful environment they're born in, right? So they have to be able to thermoregulate, to warm themselves up, to shiver to prevent hypothermia. If they're not able to do that, we actually, and I'll go through this later, see pretty high death loss due to hypothermia if we're not intervening and helping those calves. So I would recommend at least supplementing those calves, if not completely replacing with a colostrum product, a full colostral fat colostrum product, to make sure that they are able to thermoregulate. Other calves to think about are those born in a time crunch, right? I said earlier, if we're not seeing those calves getting up and nursing within the first couple of hours, we should definitely be intervening and providing a supplement so that they have the energy to get up and then to suckle off of the dam to get a second feeding. Other calves to think about are those born with dystocia or any abnormal presentation time, right? If it's a pulled or a C-section calf, those calves actually have a reduced apparent efficacy of absorption. So I told you, best case scenario, that calf can absorb about 50% of the antibodies that it consumes. For a dystocia calf, that is reduced to about 25%. So we have to be feeding very potent, concentrated colostrum to these calves right away so that they can efficiently absorb it based on that absorptive capacity that they have. So I would recommend starting with a high concentrated replacer for those calves. Calves born in a muddy lot or kind of any sort of confinement where they're around mud or manure, those calves, the first thing that they're going to do is start ingesting different things. Well, the first thing they ingest shouldn't be a pile of shit that they're laying in. We want to make sure that the first thing that they're getting is high quality, clean colostrum. And for that matter, too, if a calf gets up to nurse off of the dam and her teats are covered in manure, that calf is first ingesting bacteria that could cause salmonella or E. coli or different things that could start scours before we're preventing it. So starting with high quality and clean colostrum is so important. And then the last thing that I'll remind anyone on this call is that if we're investing in genetics for a calf, first off, we want that calf to be healthy and to survive the first 90 days of life. Actually, the statistic for calves that have failed passive transfer is that they're 4 times more likely to die by 60 days of age. Well, if we've poured into this calf already to have high genetic performance and that calf dies, we're not getting any return on that investment. And so making sure that those calves, number one, are healthy and survive, but also that they reach their highest genetic potential is so important. And so focusing on those calves and making sure that they're getting the best start is what we should do. So impacts on the beef side of failed passive transfer. So we used to not be able to really equate this to economics, right? So it varies from year to year what we can have for return on investment in calves. But I want to focus on this study that happened in Clay Center, Nebraska, where we took 263 crossbred calves. And what we noticed were the calves that did not have successful passive transfer. They were 6.4 times greater, or had a 6.4 times greater risk of sickness within the first 28 days, 3.2 times greater risk of sickness prior to weaning, 5.4 times greater risk of death prior to weaning, and then they were 35 pounds lower at weaning. And so we can equate that to economics, right? If we're selling a weaned calf that's based off of his or her weaning weight, if we're 35 pounds lighter, we can equate that to a dollar amount. And then the other notes that we have is that calves grow at 2/3 the rate as other calves that have adequate passive transfer. And then we also noted that in the first 6 months, their feed efficiency could be reduced by up to 50%. So it's kind of an issue if we're not making sure that these calves have successful passive transfer. And oftentimes, if we see some of these negative growth parameters in a calf, right? If we have 2 calves that we're selling at weaning weight and one is significantly lighter, we don't often think that that is because that calf didn't get colostrum on day 1. We think of all the other factors that maybe came into play. I'll stop just for a second. I think I see a question in there. So Zach had asked, are there any concerns for calves born from aged cows, 8 and up? So we don't have specific statistics that show that older cows have lower quality of colostrum or lower volume. At that point, it kind of depends on if that calf is still, or if that cow, that aged cow is still healthy. So you'll be able to tell by her udder quality. You can see if her teats have changed throughout her lifetime. If her udder looks healthy, if her teats look normal, it should be okay. The other thing to consider with cow health is that if a cow has a low body condition score, we notice that kind of out west when they have some issues with grass throughout the drought that's going on right now. Lighter cows or cows that you weren't able to flesh up during gestation, they can have lower quality colostrum and lower volume as well. So we don't know specifically about older cows, but we do know that those other factors are a concern. Good question. Okay, oh no, I'm giving it away. So the next thing that we're going to address is on the dairy side. So within dairy calves, think to yourself, do you think that more dairy calves have failed passive transfer or less dairy calves compared to beef calves? So it's actually less. So I told you earlier, 1 in 3 calves have failed passive transfer. Within the dairy side, it's 1 in every 5 calves. And to me, that's because we're intervening more with dairy calves. When a beef calf is born, we just assume that that dam takes care of it. When a dairy calf is born, we take care of it, right? So we're influencing how quickly that calf is fed and what it's being fed, right? So when we're talking about dairy calves, all of those factors that I went through that we need to consider when we're calving out beef calves still come into play, right? A calf is a calf. And so one factor on one side is the same as the other. But what we can do with dairy calves, excuse me, is we can actually check what we're feeding them, right? So if we're collecting maternal colostrum, we can see whether or not we have enough volume to get that calf 10% of its body weight. We can also check the quality of maternal colostrum using a refractometer. And so we are testing the colostrum and being able to say, hey, we're feeding this calf enough or we're not feeding it enough and we need to supplement. And we have enough antibodies, or we can assume that based on this Brix percentage, it's high enough quality. The other risk factor that we have within the dairy side is disease transmission. So if we're not pasteurizing or heat treating our colostrum and we're pooling it, we need to make sure that we're testing for bacteria counts to make sure that that colostrum is clean so that we're not infecting calves and we're preventing field pathogen transfer. I have just on the screen, this is kind of our protocol that we have for dairy calves and getting them colostrum. So just as a refresher, we feed it quickly, right? We want to feed it within the first 2 hours. Quality, we want to make sure that the Brix percent is 22 or higher. That we can equate to at least 50 grams of IG per liter, and that's the goal. Again, quantity, 3 to 4 liters based off body weight, so 10% of the body weight. And then again, we want to make sure that that colostrum that we're feeding is clean and safe. Okay, any questions? I will stop for a second. Does anyone have any questions about which calves need colostrum? Okay, no questions, that's no problem. If you have questions after the presentation, always feel free to reach out to me as well. So now I'm going to go through, now that we've established the need, what is the solution then for those calves, or what should we provide for them? I'm going to start with a video here that explains the SCCL solution. So when we say that we're providing colostrum for these calves in the form of a colostrum replacer or supplement, this is how we do it. We collect it from dairies, right? So in order to get colostrum into bags, it has to come from a cow, right? Because that's where colostrum comes from. So it's just a quick video that shows the process that we take. It's gonna play. Oh, maybe it won't play. Sorry about that, guys. Well, I can explain the process that we take. So like I mentioned, if we're getting colostrum into our products, right? We don't add anything in, we don't take anything out. Our products are made from colostrum. We have to collect that from dairies. So we collect from almost 900,000 cows globally, 500 here in Canada and the US, 500,000 cows, mostly Holstein cows. And we ask that those producers provide us the first 2 feedings, so the first 2 milkings, so that we know that the colostrum that we're putting into our products is high quality. When it's collected on farm, it's put into pails, and then it's trucked up to our processing facility up in Saskatchewan. And then there it is heat treated. What we can do as a company and kind of how we were established as a company is we wanted to be able to successfully eradicate yonis. We knew that that was a challenge in a lot of dairies and a lot of just cow herds in general in both Canada and the US. And so we wanted to provide a way to eradicate yonis and colostrum. So that's what we do. We eradicate any disease challenges that could be in that maternal colostrum. And then we spray dry it. So it goes into powder form. We agglomerate it, which is a fancy term that means that we help with the mixability of that powder. And then it goes into our different bags, which are the products that you know and that you, or that I say that you know and that you love. We're really excited about the product lineup that we have. So I'm going to go through 5 different questions that you should maybe consider when you're considering which product you should use for your calves, or which product you should offer for your customers. So the first question to ask is my product actually made from colostrum? So you'd be surprised. There are a lot of different products in the market, and we test them regularly. We like to know what our competitors are up to. And so we've noticed that there are about 50 some other products in the market that claim to replace colostrum effectively. Well, we know from time and time again in efficacy studies after efficacy studies that the best start that a calf can get is from feeding it colostrum. And so you'll notice that the only ingredient in our products is that it's colostrum. It can be kind of deceiving if you look at another label that has a long list of ingredients, because you might think, hey, if they're in there, my calf probably needs them. But it's just our competitors trying to recreate something that probably shouldn't be recreated, right? It's already pretty perfect in how it, in the profile that it contains for newborn calves. And that includes, just as a refresher, immunoglobulins, colostral fat as its form of energy, and then the vitamins and nutrient profile that a calf really needs to have the best start. So if you don't see a long list of ingredients on our products, know that that means that it's made from colostrum, which is the best thing that you can do for your calves. I like to play this game with anyone that I'm presenting to think about another area where we like to recreate something from scratch. You'll see I have 3 different ingredient labels up on the screen. One is for Impossible Burger, one is for Beyond Meat, and one is for dog food. And I'll let you try to decide which is which. Any guesses? So the middle one was dog food, but I just like to play this game because when we think about doing that in other areas in just the ag industry, it kind of seems crazy, right? It's not something that we think is typically a good thing. And so at SCCL, we're very proud to be the 100% beef patty of the colostrum world. So we are made from whole bovine colostrum. The next question that you should ask is how much colostral fat is in my product? Colostral fat is so important when it comes to that calf's ability to digest and easily digest and efficiently digest a fat source so that it can use it appropriately. So within all of our products, we don't fractionate out the colostral fat. We keep it intact. You'll see if it's like a serum-based product like Lifeline, they have to add back in a fat source because they're not made from colostrum. A lot of other companies that make products from colostrum will actually fractionate out the fat and they'll sell it into the human byproducts market. So human nutraceutical companies, human, I guess, beauty companies that create makeup, they love to use colostral fat for different facial products, makeup, health products. And so you can cash that in and make a pretty good buck on the colostral fat. But we know that if we're providing the best thing for our customers, that is whole colostrum. So we leave the colostral fat in, and here's really why. When calves are born, and I talked about the challenge of hypothermia, if a calf is born within the first 24 hours, the majority of those calves are not dying because they have dehydration or scours or respiratory illness or anything else that can challenge them over the next couple weeks. But in the first 24 hours, the majority of those calves that die due to hypothermia. And so we can actually influence that and help prevent that by feeding whole fat colostrum. And so what happens is that when a calf is born, it has about 1 to 2% of brown fat cells. And those brown fat cells are supposed to be the energy source or the fire for that calf to be able to shiver and stay warm. If we're not giving those calves anything to be able to metabolize their brown fat, they're left cold. And so we need to feed colostrum and colostral fat to give them the energy source that they need to stay warm and to tap into their fat reserve of their brown fat cells. We conducted a study that showed the differences between calves fed a colostral fat colostrum alternative or one that did not have colostral fat. And they were both fed the same levels of IGs, both had the same levels of passive transfer, but we wanted to know how the fat influenced those calves. And what we noticed was that at 90 days of age, the calves that were fed defatted colostrum had a 50% increase in respiratory disease, 6% increase in mortality. They were spent, they spent more time lying around rather than getting up and nursing, which we want those calves to get up and nurse, right? And then we also noted 0.154 less average daily gain. So those calves were 14.33 pounds lighter at 90 days. And then we also noted, and this was really the point of the study, was to see if those calves would be able to more easily thermoregulate. And they were. That's kind of what we were expecting, but we didn't know that we would have all of these other impacts on performance and health. So making sure that if you're feeding colostrum, it has colostral fat in it. The next question that you should ask is, does it offer high immune protection? And so if you're feeding a colostrum-based product, it is about 90% IgG1. A whey or a blood-based product is about half IgG1 and half IgG2. And you might try to tell me, hey, IgGs are all the same. Why does it really matter? But if you're feeding either colostrum or blood-based products, the calf will ingest those Igs, they go into the small intestine, they're absorbed into the circulatory system, but it's only IgG1 that's found in colostrum that's resecreted back into the small intestine and back into the lungs through like the mucosal lining to actually provide protection. So if we're not doing that and we're not feeding colostrum, those calves aren't getting that extra protection. The fourth question that you should ask is my product licensed by the USDA? What we have to prove is that all of our products are safe, effective, pure, and potent. So other products that are licensed just as a feed grade don't have to go through the same rigorous testing to prove that. And so in order to tell if a product is licensed by the USDA, is that the most prominent thing on the bag is bovine IgG. So that you'll see that in big, bold font on those bags. So you know that those are pure, potent, safe, and effective. And then the last thing to note is my product convenient, right? Sometimes that's the first question that we ask ourselves is, hey, is this going to be a pain in the butt to feed, or is this easy for me to mix up and feed for my calves? I'm here to tell you SCCL colostrum is very convenient. It's potent enough to mix into a 2-quart final volume. We have a 3-year shelf life. So if you were to bring in some products to have on hand while you're calving, and then you don't get through them all because it's an easy breezy calving season, which I hope that it is for everybody, you can store the bags and save them for the next calving season. So no worries on having to make sure that you're getting them fed within the first calving season. And then we are an enhanced instant mix product too. So I've heard of some producers just shaking it directly in the bottle. If your water's hot enough, you can do that. Or you can use a whisk like we have on the screen here, whisk it in the bucket, and then pour it into a bottle or a tube feeder from there, but it mixes quickly. Any questions on like specific products that are out there or comparing different solutions? Okay, well, I will go ahead then and round this out by explaining the SCCL solution. So what products do we offer for you to feed to your calves? So one of our most popular products is our Gold supplement. So if you're feeding less than 100 grams of IgG, it's considered a supplement, right? So in order to have a full replacer and to really impact the immunity of a calf, you want to be feeding well above 100 grams of IgG. Industry standards today actually recommend 200 to 300 grams of IgG to have successful passive transfer, what we consider excellent passive transfer. So higher levels are better for the calves. So as a supplement, our Gold product is 60 grams of IgG. Another popular product that we have is our High Cal, and so that's high energy or high fat. It's 100 grams of IgG, so one bag is still not quite a full replacer. We would suggest feeding 1 to 2 bags for full replacement. But again, that's a great one to have on hand for any environmental stresses, right? Or cold stress, just to be able to get that calf to warm up. And then SCCL actually now owns and manufactures the brand Colostrum. So maybe that's one that you're familiar with. But I have a brief video to show you here about a customer that's been using it for years and just really likes the brand. Maybe no videos. Okay, sorry about that, guys. I don't know why it doesn't let me click through them. Well, check out the Colostrum's Facebook page to view that video if you're interested to learn more about the Schweers family. They're the Bar Nothing Ranch out of Montana, so feel free to check out our Facebook page to see that video. But the Colostrum lineup has two products, Colostrum CS, which is our colostrum supplement. It's 50 grams of IgG, high in cholesterol fat as well. It's similar to our high cal product in that regard. And then we also have the Colostrum CR. So it's 100 grams of IgG. Again, we would want you to feed a little bit more than one bag to be into replacement zone. But 100 grams of IgG is what you're getting in Colostrum CR. With that, I have up on the screen our contact roster. I said I would leave you with some good contacts to reach out to if you ever have any other questions. We do have two members on our team here in the US that are veterinarians. And so if you have any calf challenges on farm and want to reach out to one of them, their contact information is there. And I can send it to Colleen too, and she can send it as a follow-up as well. And then I encourage you, if you want to learn more, check out our Facebook page for both SCCL and Colostrum, so that you can reach out and we can be in touch. With that, does anyone have any questions on anything colostrum related or calf related? Well, feel free to reach out if you do think of anything during calving season or if any questions do come to mind. We're always here to help, and we wish everyone a safe and healthy calving season. And again, thank you so much for taking the time to learn more about us at SCCL and more about how to give your calves the best start.
Yes, thank you, Julianna. And again, as she said, feel free to reach out to their team or reach out to someone on the Armor team if you have a sales representative. They're always happy to help you and get you connected with the SCCL team. So with that, we'll wrap things up. Just a reminder, we did record this webinar and we will be distributing it as long, for all of you who joined us on the call, you registered for this webinar. So we have you in our system and are able to send you a link to the recording that you can watch again yourself or share with your friends. And with that, I will thank Julianna one more time and thank all of you for joining us this afternoon officially now, I guess, depending on where you're joining us from. And thank you again. And thanks, Julianna.